There was once a young boy named Idris who lived in a small village called Iringa, not far from the bustling city of Lagos. Idris was different from all the other boys. He was clever, quick with a smile, and always loved to play with colors, fabrics, and make-believe. The other children often teased him, calling him strange, but Idris didn't mind too much. He had big dreams that took him far beyond the small village where everyone seemed the same. One strange night, when Idris was walking by the river, he noticed something unusual. The river seemed to glow under the moonlight, and a soft mist hovered above it. Idris stepped closer, curious, and that's when he saw her, a beautiful mermaid with hair that shimmered like silver under the moon, her eyes as dark and deep as the sea. She was floating just beneath the water's surface, watching him with an unreadable expression. "Come closer," the mermaid whispered. Her voice was soft and sweet, like the gentle lapping of waves. "I can make all your dreams come true, Idris. You want to be a star, don't you?" Idris froze. He had never told anyone his deepest dreams. How could this mermaid know? But her words echoed in his heart. He wanted to be known, to be loved by many, to shine like the brightest star. The mermaid's voice was soothing, her promise tempting. Without thinking, Idris stepped closer to the water's edge, and as he did, the mermaid reached out and touched his hand. A cold shiver ran through his body, and everything went dark. When Idris woke up the next morning, he was back in his bed, but something felt different. His skin tingled, and as he looked at his reflection in the small, cracked mirror, he noticed subtle changes. His features were softer, more delicate. His eyes sparkled with an unfamiliar light, and his hair seemed to flow more smoothly. He blinked, wondering if it was just his imagination. But it wasn't. In the days that followed, more changes appeared. His voice became softer, almost melodious. His body felt different, as though it didn't quite belong to him anymore. And then there were the strange thoughts and feelings that bubbled up inside him. Idris began to feel like the person he saw in the mirror wasn't who he truly was. Like there was another self, trapped inside him, trying to break free. His parents, Baba Musa and Mama Eka, started to notice too. They worried about the changes in their son, but couldn't make sense of them. Idris tried to explain what was happening, but the words didn't come easily. The mermaid's voice echoed in his dreams at night, telling him that these changes were a part of his destiny, that he was becoming who he was meant to be. As the days passed, Idris's transformation became more apparent. His walk became more graceful, his gestures more delicate, and he found himself drawn to things that he had never paid attention to before: bright clothes, jewelry, and makeup. He began experimenting with different styles, often sewing his own outfits from the colorful fabrics he found in the market. But it wasn't just the changes in his appearance and behavior that troubled the villagers. Strange things started happening around Idris. When he passed by, the wind would pick up, blowing in unnatural ways. The animals in the village seemed uneasy around him, and people swore they heard whispers whenever he was near water. The villagers started to talk. Some said that Idris had been cursed by a water spirit. Others believed he was practicing witchcraft. Rumors spread like wildfire, and soon, people began to avoid him. Children no longer played with him, and even his closest friends became distant. One day, his parents took him to see Elder Bako, the village's wise man. Bako was old and revered for his knowledge of spirits and magic. He looked at Idris carefully, his wise eyes studying every inch of the boy. Then he took Baba Musa and Mama Eka aside and spoke in a low voice. "This boy," Bako said gravely, "has been touched by an ancient force. A powerful spirit lives inside him now, a mermaid spirit. She has chosen him for reasons we cannot understand. Unless we find a way to break her hold, Idris will never be the same again." Idris's parents were frightened by Elder Bako's words. They loved their son dearly, but they didn't recognize him anymore. Mama Eka wept at night, praying for her son to be freed from whatever was controlling him. Baba Musa, though a strong and stoic man, couldn't hide the worry etched on his face. Determined to save their son, They took Idris on a long journey across many villages, seeking help from shamans, priests, and healers. They visited temples, where the priests performed rituals to cleanse Idris of the mermaid's influence. They spoke to powerful witches, who tried to cast spells to free him, but nothing worked. Meanwhile, Idris was torn. He knew that something had changed inside him, something beyond his control. But at the same time, he felt more like himself than he ever had before. The mermaid's influence was not entirely evil. She gave him a sense of power, beauty, and confidence that he had never known. Deep down, Idris didn't want to let go of the transformation. With each passing day, the mermaid's voice grew stronger in his mind, whispering promises of fame, fortune, and acceptance. It became harder for Idris to resist her pull. "I can make you a star, Idris," the mermaid whispered. "You will be adored by all. The world will love you for who you are." The words echoed in his heart. Despite the strange and frightening changes, Idris longed to be someone special. So, one day, without telling his parents, Idris made a decision. He would leave the village and go to Lagos, the city of dreams. There, he believed, he could embrace who he was becoming and fulfill his destiny. Idris left a note for his parents, explaining that he needed to follow his own path. Early one morning, before the sun had risen, he packed a small bag with clothes and food and quietly slipped out of the house. The road to Lagos was long and dangerous, but Idris felt no fear. The mermaid's voice was with him, guiding him along the way. As he traveled, Idris met many people, some kind, others not so much. But he kept moving forward, determined to reach the city. Along the way, he discovered more about the mermaid's power. She granted him the ability to charm people, to make them see him as he wanted to be seen. It was a strange magic, one that Idris was only beginning to understand. Finally, after weeks of traveling, Idris reached Lagos. The city was bigger and more vibrant than anything he had ever imagined. The streets were crowded with people, cars, and market stalls, selling everything from food to clothes to strange trinkets. Idris felt a surge of excitement. This was the place where he could start his new life. But Lagos was also a city of challenges. It was easy to get lost in the crowd, and not everyone was kind to strangers. Idris quickly learned that to survive, he would need more than just charm. He would need to be strong and clever. And so, with the mermaid's guidance, Idris began to make a name for himself. In Lagos, Idris reinvented himself. He took on the name Bobrisky and began to transform into a dazzling figure that no one could ignore. He embraced the beauty, fashion, and glamour that he had always loved, and soon, people began to take notice. With the mermaid's power still coursing through him, Bobrisky became famous for his boldness and confidence. He started by creating online videos, where he showed off his stunning outfits and makeup skills. His followers grew by the thousands, and soon he was known throughout Lagos as the fearless and fabulous Bobrisky. But it wasn't just his appearance that drew people to him, it was his attitude. Bobrisky was unapologetically himself, and that inspired others to embrace their true selves as well. As Bobrisky's fame grew, so did the rumors. People whispered about the strange power that seemed to surround him. Some said that he had been blessed by the gods, while others believed he was still under the curse of the mermaid. But Bobrisky didn't care about the rumors. He had found his place in the world, and nothing was going to stop him. As Bobrisky's fame in Lagos grew, so did the influence of the mermaid's spirit within him. At first it seemed like a blessing. The mermaid had given him beauty, charm, and a magnetic presence that drew people to him like moths to a flame. His online presence skyrocketed, and he became a sensation across Nigeria. But with the fame came something else, a shadow that loomed over him, growing darker with each passing day. The mermaid's voice, which had once been a soft whisper in his dreams, now echoed louder and more frequently in his mind. She demanded his attention, calling him to the water, urging him to return to the river where they first met. The pull of the mermaid became stronger and harder to resist, and at times, Bobrisky felt like he was losing control over his own thoughts and actions. One night, after a particularly glamorous event where Bobrisky had dazzled the crowd with his bold fashion and radiant beauty, He felt an overwhelming urge to visit the water. It was as if his feet moved on their own, leading him to the shores of a small lagoon on the outskirts of the city. There, under the light of the moon, the water shimmered just as it had the night he first met the mermaid. And then she appeared, rising from the water with her silvery hair flowing behind her and her dark eyes fixed on him. Her smile was as beautiful as ever, but this time there was something sinister in her gaze. "You have done well, Idris," the mermaid said in her soft, lilting voice. "You are famous now. People love you, but do not forget, it was my gift that made all of this possible." Bobrisky shivered, feeling the cold fingers of fear wrap around his heart. He had thought he was in control, that he was the one shaping his destiny. But now, as he stood before the mermaid, he realized that she had been pulling the strings all along. "What do you want from me?" Bobrisky asked, his voice trembling. The mermaid's smile widened, revealing sharp teeth beneath her lips. "You belong to me, Idris. You have always belonged to me, and now it is time for you to fulfill your true purpose." Bobrisky stepped back, fear rising in his chest. "What purpose? I never asked for this." The mermaid's voice turned cold. "You did, Idris. You asked for fame, beauty, and power. I gave you all of that. But now, I need something in return." Bobrisky felt his heart race as the mermaid began to rise higher from the water, her form growing taller and more menacing. "You will come to the river once more when the moon is full," she commanded. "And when you do, you will bring me a gift, a life. Only then will I release you from my hold." After that fateful night by the lagoon, Bobrisky's life changed once again. The mermaid's command weighed heavily on his heart, and he began to feel her presence more strongly than ever before. She haunted his dreams, whispering dark promises and reminding him of the price he had yet to pay. Bobrisky tried to resist her influence. He focused on his career, throwing himself into his work, attending glamorous events, and creating more content for his adoring fans. But no matter how hard he tried to distract himself, the mermaid's voice was always there, lurking in the back of his mind, waiting for the moment to strike. As the days passed, Bobrisky noticed that strange things began happening around him once again. His once perfect reflection in the mirror seemed to waver and distort at times, showing him glimpses of the mermaid's face staring back at him. Water would sometimes appear where it shouldn't, dripping from his ceiling or pooling around his feet, even when there was no rain. He felt as though the mermaid was always watching him, waiting for him to fulfill her dark request. Bobrisky grew more anxious with each passing day. The full moon was approaching, and he knew he couldn't escape the mermaid's demand. She had given him everything he had ever wanted, but the price she was asking for was too high. He didn't want to take another life. He wasn't a monster. But the mermaid's grip on him was strong, and the more he resisted, the more painful it became. In his time of need, Bobrisky found comfort in an unexpected place. He had made many friends in Lagos, but one friend in particular stood out, a kind-hearted woman named Adana. Adana was an actress, known for her sharp wit and her ability to see through people's masks. She and Bobrisky had bonded over their shared love of fashion and their dreams of success, and she quickly became one of his closest confidants. One evening, after a long day of filming, Adana noticed that Bobrisky seemed distant and troubled. She pulled him aside and asked what was wrong. "Bob, I've known you long enough to tell when something's bothering you," Adana said gently. "You're not yourself lately. What's going on?" For a moment, Bobrisky hesitated. He had never told anyone about the mermaid, about the curse that had brought him fame and fortune, but also burdened him with fear. But he trusted Adana, and he knew he couldn't keep this secret to himself any longer. So, he told her everything. He told her about the night by the river when the mermaid had first appeared, the changes she had brought into his life, and the terrible demand she had made of him. Adana listened carefully, her expression growing more serious with each word. When Bobrisky finished, Adana was silent for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "Bob, this is serious," she said, "but you're not alone in this. We're going to find a way to break this curse, no matter what it takes." Bobrisky felt a surge of relief wash over him. For the first time in weeks, he felt like there might be hope. With Adana by his side, he didn't feel as alone or as helpless. Together, they began to search for a solution, anything that could free Bobrisky from the mermaid's control without fulfilling her dark request. Adana and Bobrisky's search for help led them deep into the heart of Lagos, where they sought out a woman known as Priestess Yema. Yema was a powerful spiritual leader, known for her knowledge of the spirit world and her ability to commune with forces beyond the understanding of ordinary people. When Bobrisky and Adana arrived at Yema's shrine, they were greeted by the priestess herself, a tall, regal woman with piercing eyes and an air of wisdom. She listened intently as Bobrisky explained his story, nodding slowly as she took in every detail. "You have been touched by a water spirit," Yema said when Bobrisky finished. "A very old and powerful one. Mermaids are not to be trifled with. They are known for their beauty, but they can be as cruel as the ocean's depths. Once they have chosen you, it is very difficult to escape their grasp." Bobrisky's heart sank. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to be free." Yema regarded him thoughtfully for a moment. Then she spoke. "There is a way," she said slowly, "but it will not be easy. You must confront the mermaid and offer her something even more valuable than the life she demands. Only then will she release you from her curse." Bobrisky and Adana exchanged worried glances. "What could be more valuable than a life?" Adana asked. Yema's eyes gleamed as she answered. "That is something you must discover for yourself. But be warned, if you fail, the mermaid will not be so easily swayed next time." Armed with Priestess Yema's advice, Bobrisky and Adana began to devise a plan. They knew that simply confronting the mermaid wouldn't be enough. They needed something powerful, something that would satisfy the mermaid and break her hold over Bobrisky once and for all. As they prepared for the full moon, Bobrisky reflected on everything that had happened to him since that fateful night by the river. He had achieved fame, fortune, and beauty beyond his wildest dreams, but it had come at a terrible cost. Now, he had to find a way to free himself from the mermaid's influence or risk losing everything he had gained. Together, Bobrisky and Adana prepared for the night of the full moon, knowing that it would be the most dangerous and important night of Bobrisky's life. With hope in their hearts and determination in their spirits, they set out to confront the mermaid once and for all. This brings the story to the halfway point, building tension and setting up for a climactic confrontation with the mermaid. If you'd like, I can continue with the story, unfolding the final chapters where Bobrisky faces the mermaid, discovers the true nature of the curse, and finds a resolution to his conflict. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed. The full moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver glow over Lagos. The streets were quiet as the city seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the coming storm. Bobrisky and Adana made their way back to the lagoon where the mermaid had first appeared, their hearts heavy with fear, but also hope. Priestess Yema's words echoed in their minds, something more valuable than a life. But what could that be? Bobrisky clutched a small charm Yema had given him, a token of protection meant to ward off the mermaid's darker influences. He wasn't sure how much it would help, but holding it gave him a sense of comfort. Adana walked beside him, her expression fierce and determined. She had promised to stand by him no matter what, and Bobrisky was grateful for her courage. When they arrived at the lagoon, the water shimmered under the moonlight, just as it had that first fateful night. The air was still, almost unnervingly so, as if the world was waiting for something to happen. And then, with a soft splash, the mermaid emerged from the water. Her beauty was as breathtaking as ever, her silver hair flowing around her like a veil, her dark eyes glittering in the moonlight. But there was something more dangerous about her now, something menacing in the way she moved toward Bobrisky. "You have returned," the mermaid said, her voice soft but filled with power. "Have you brought me my gift?" Bobrisky took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I have come to make a different offer," he said, his voice trembling slightly but steady. The mermaid's smile faded, and her eyes narrowed. "A different offer? I gave you everything you wanted, Idris, and now you think you can change the terms of our deal?" Bobrisky stood his ground, feeling Adana's presence beside him, lending him strength. "You asked for a life," he said, "but I believe there is something even more valuable than a life, a soul." The mermaid tilted her head, intrigued. "A soul, you say? And whose soul are you offering, Idris?" Bobrisky swallowed hard. "My own," he said. "I offer you my soul in exchange for freedom from your curse. Let me go, and I will give you everything I am, my fame, my beauty, my power. You can have it all." The mermaid's dark eyes gleamed with interest, but there was a cold smile on her lips. "A bold offer," she said. "But do you truly understand what you are offering? Once I take your soul, you will be nothing. All that you have worked for will vanish. You will be forgotten, lost to the world. Are you prepared for that?" Bobrisky hesitated. The thought of losing everything he had gained, his fame, his identity, his very self, terrified him. But at the same time, he knew that living under the mermaid's curse was no life at all. He couldn't continue like this, always fearing the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. "I am prepared," Bobrisky said quietly. "Take my soul, but let me live free." The mermaid's smile widened, and she began to move closer to Bobrisky, her eyes gleaming with hunger. "Very well," she whispered. "Your soul will be mine." Just as the mermaid reached out to claim Bobrisky's soul, a sudden wind whipped through the air, causing the water to churn violently. The lagoon, once calm and peaceful, erupted into chaos as waves crashed against the shore. The moonlight seemed to dim, and the mermaid paused, her eyes narrowing in confusion. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman dressed in flowing white robes, her hair wrapped in a colorful jewel. It was Priestess Yema. "Stop!" Yema commanded, her voice ringing out across the lagoon. "This deal is not yours to make, spirit. You have no right to claim this soul." The mermaid hissed, her eyes flashing with anger. "Who are you to challenge me, human?" Yema stepped forward, her presence radiating power. "I am Yema, a servant of the gods, and I have come to right the wrongs you have committed. Idris's soul is not yours to take." The mermaid sneered. "He offered it willingly." "Only because you tricked him," Yema said. "You preyed on his desires and twisted them for your own gain. But the gods do not look kindly on those who use their powers to deceive." The mermaid's smile faltered, and for the first time she looked uncertain. Yema continued, her voice strong and unwavering. "Release him from your curse, spirit, or face the wrath of the gods." For a moment, the mermaid seemed to consider her options. Then, with a furious scream, she dove back into the water, disappearing beneath the waves. The lagoon slowly returned to its calm state, the wind dying down and the moonlight returning to its full brilliance. Bobrisky stood frozen in place, his heart racing. He had been so close to losing everything, but Yema had saved him. He turned to her, gratitude flooding his chest. "Thank you," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to repay you." Yema smiled kindly. "You owe me nothing, Idris. The gods guided me here to help you, but you must be careful in the future. The spirits of the water are powerful, and they do not forget easily. You have been given a second chance. Use it wisely." After that night, Bobrisky felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The mermaid's curse had been broken, and he no longer felt her dark presence lurking in his mind. The strange occurrences around him stopped, and the whispers of the water grew silent. But things were not entirely the same. Although he was free from the mermaid's control, Bobrisky felt different, lighter, as though a part of him had been stripped away. He realized that the mermaid had not taken his soul, but she had taken something, a piece of the magic that had once made him so dazzling and magnetic. His fame began to wane slightly, the shine that had once surrounded him dimming just a little. But Bobrisky found that he didn't mind as much as he thought he would. He still had his beauty, his confidence, and his loyal fans, but more importantly, he had his freedom. He was no longer bound to the mermaid's dark power, and for that, he was grateful. Adana stayed by his side, helping him adjust to this new chapter in his life. Together they continued to work on their careers, building their own success without the need for supernatural forces. Bobrisky realized that true power didn't come from the mermaid's magic, or from the approval of others. It came from within. It came from being true to oneself, no matter the cost. As time passed, Bobrisky reflected on the journey he had taken. He had faced challenges that most people could never imagine. He had been cursed by a mermaid, forced to confront the darkest parts of himself, and nearly lost his soul. But through it all, he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more grounded in who he truly was. The fame and glamour were still a part of his life, but they no longer defined him. Bobrisky had learned that true happiness came from within, from being at peace with himself and his choices. He continued to live his life boldly and unapologetically, but now he did so with a deeper understanding of what it meant to be free. And as for the mermaid, well, she was never seen again. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon was full and the water shimmered in the light, Bobrisky could still feel her presence, watching from the depths of the lagoon. He knew she would never truly be gone, but he also knew that she no longer had power over him. Bobrisky had reclaimed his destiny, and he was ready to face whatever the future held with courage and grace. After the mermaid incident, Bobrisky thought he had seen the last of the supernatural in his life. But one warm evening, as he was getting ready for a charity gala, something caught his eye. On his vanity table sat a small, shimmering seashell, one he did not remember picking up. As he reached out to touch it, a wave of dizziness washed over him, and for a brief moment, he felt as if he were underwater again, the sound of rushing waves echoing in his ears. The sensation passed quickly, but it left Bobrisky shaken. The seashell was no ordinary object. It pulsed with a faint glow, and as Bobrisky stared at it, he knew deep down that the mermaid's influence was not completely gone. Perhaps there were more mysteries yet to be uncovered. Bobrisky debated what to do. He had spent so long freeing himself from the mermaid's grip. Was it worth diving back into the world of spirits and danger? But curiosity, as always, tugged at him. What if there was something more he was meant to learn? What if the mermaid wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of something even bigger? With a sense of resolve, Bobrisky decided he needed to visit the river again, the place where this all started. He packed a small bag, donned a simple but elegant outfit, you never know when you might be recognized, and set off once more, this time alone, with the mysterious seashell in hand. As Bobrisky approached the riverbank, the familiar sound of the water lapping against the shore greeted him. But this time, the river seemed different, calmer, yet filled with an energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Bobrisky stood there for a long moment, wondering what he was hoping to find. Just as he was about to turn back, he heard a voice. "You shouldn't be here, my friend," said a deep, weathered voice. Bobrisky turned and saw an old fisherman standing a few paces away, his skin tanned from years in the sun, his eyes sharp and knowing. "I have my reasons," Bobrisky said cautiously. "I've been here before. This river holds more than just water, doesn't it?" The fisherman chuckled softly. "You're not the first one to feel the call of the river's spirits, but you must be careful. Not all spirits are as forgiving as the one you faced." Bobrisky's heart skipped a beat. The man knew. Somehow, he knew about the mermaid. "Are you saying there are more spirits here?" Bobrisky asked. The fisherman nodded. "The river is home to many beings. Some are ancient, far older than the mermaid who took an interest in you. They keep to themselves, but every now and then, someone like you stumbles across their path. They are curious, dangerous even, but if you approach them with respect, they may offer you knowledge beyond your wildest dreams." Before Bobrisky could respond, the fisherman pointed to the seashell in his hand. "That gift is from one of them. Be mindful of what it may ask in return." The old fisherman's words echoed in Bobrisky's mind as he continued his journey along the river. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the water, and Bobrisky couldn't help but feel both excited and uneasy. He knew the supernatural world was complex, full of unexpected twists and dangers. But if he was going to step back into that world, he wanted to do it on his own terms this time. As night fell, Bobrisky found a quiet spot by the river and sat down, placing the seashell carefully in front of him. He closed his eyes and listened to the sounds of the night, the rustling of leaves, the soft croaking of frogs, and the gentle ripple of the river. He focused on the seashell, trying to connect with whatever spirit had left it for him. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered through the air, "Idris." Bobrisky's eyes shot open. The voice was sweet and musical, but there was something ethereal about it, something that made the hair on his arms stand on end. "You seek knowledge," the voice continued, "but knowledge comes with a price." Bobrisky looked around, but he saw no one. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am the spirit of the river," the voice said. "Long before the mermaid found you, I watched over these waters. You are bold to return here, but boldness is not always rewarded. What is it that you seek, Idris?" Bobrisky hesitated. He wasn't entirely sure what he sought. He wanted answers about the mermaid, about the strange magic that had touched his life, and about the mysterious forces that seemed to be drawn to him. But he also wanted to know if he was truly free from the mermaid's influence, or if she was still lurking in the shadows of his life. "I seek freedom," Bobrisky said. "True freedom. I want to live my life without fear of being controlled by spirits. But I also seek understanding. I want to know why the mermaid chose me, and what else lies within this river." The spirit was silent for a long moment. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "Freedom and knowledge are rare gifts," the spirit said. "I can offer you both, but you must prove yourself worthy. If you are willing, you must undertake a journey, a test of your spirit. Only then will you find the answers you seek." Bobrisky's heart raced. Another test. After everything he had been through, the idea of another challenge sent shivers down his spine. But he knew he couldn't turn back now. If he was going to face the unknown, he had to do it with courage and determination. "I accept your challenge," Bobrisky said, his voice steady. The river spirit seemed pleased, for the water began to ripple gently, as if acknowledging his choice. "Your journey begins at dawn," the spirit said. "Follow the river upstream until you reach the forest of Akoro. There, you will find the first of your trials. Be strong, Idris. The path ahead is treacherous, but if you succeed, you will earn the freedom and knowledge you seek." Bobrisky nodded, though his mind swirled with questions. What kind of trials awaited him in Akoro? And how would he prove himself worthy to a spirit as ancient and powerful as this one? As the voice faded into the night, Bobrisky took a deep breath and settled in for the night. The morning would bring a new adventure, one that could change his life forever. At dawn, Bobrisky set off on his journey. The path along the river led him deeper into the wilderness, away from the bustling city of Lagos and into the heart of the untamed land. The trees grew taller and thicker as he approached the edge of the forest of Akoro, their leaves whispering in the wind like ancient secrets waiting to be uncovered. As Bobrisky stepped into the forest, he felt the air grow cooler, and the light of the sun filtered through the thick canopy above. There was an eerie silence in the forest, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. It felt as though the forest itself was alive, watching his every move. The path through the forest was not easy. The undergrowth was thick, and the ground was uneven. But Bobrisky pressed on, determined to face whatever trials awaited him. After what felt like hours of walking, he came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large, ancient tree, its roots twisting and curling like the fingers of a giant hand. At the base of the tree sat an old woman, her hair long and silver, her skin weathered, but her eyes sharp and alert. "You have come," the old woman said, her voice rough but strong. "The river spirit has sent you." Bobrisky nodded. "Yes, I'm here to face the trials." The old woman smiled, though there was no warmth in her expression. "The first trial is a test of heart. You must find your way through the forest of Akoro without losing sight of who you truly are. Many who enter this forest become lost to the darkness within themselves. Will you find your way, Idris?" Bobrisky swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. The forest was more than just trees and shadows. It was a reflection of his inner self. And to succeed, he would have to confront the parts of himself that he had tried to hide or ignore. "I will find my way," Bobrisky said firmly, though doubt gnawed at him. He wasn't sure what he would find in the depths of Akoro, but he knew he had to face it head-on. There was no turning back now. As Bobrisky ventures deeper into the forest of Akoro, The trials he faces will force him to confront the deepest parts of his identity, his fears, and his strengths. The journey will test him in ways he never imagined, bringing him face to face with spirits both kind and cruel. What lies ahead will determine not only his fate, but also the future of his connection with the supernatural world. As Bobrisky stepped away from the clearing and deeper into the forest of Akoro, the light filtering through the trees dimmed, casting long, eerie shadows across the path. The trees seemed to close in around him, their branches twisting and curling like skeletal fingers reaching out to snatch him. The air grew heavy, filled with the scent of damp earth and something else, something old and musty, like forgotten secrets buried deep within the woods. Bobrisky could feel the forest's presence, as though it were alive and aware of him. He tried to keep his mind focused, remembering the old woman's warning. This first trial was a test of his heart, a test to see if he could hold on to his true self in the face of the forest's darkness. As he walked, Bobrisky began to hear whispers, faint and indistinct, like the murmuring of a distant crowd. The whispers seemed to come from the shadows themselves, swirling around him, growing louder with every step. "Idris!" The voices hissed, the sound curling around his ears like smoke. "Why do you seek freedom? You cannot escape who you are." Bobrisky paused, trying to shake off the unease creeping into his mind. "I know who I am," he muttered under his breath. "I won't be swayed by tricks." But the whispers persisted, growing sharper, more insistent. "You are nothing without us," they taunted. "You crave power, beauty, fame. You cannot deny it. You belong to the darkness." Bobrisky clenched his fists, his heart pounding. The shadows seemed to close in around him, their whispers clawing at his resolve. They were trying to pull him into the darkness, to make him lose sight of who he was. He had to fight it. He couldn't let the forest win. Taking a deep breath, Bobrisky forced himself to focus on the truth. Yes, he had once craved fame and power, and yes, he had made choices that led him down a dark path. But he had also chosen to break free, to reclaim his life and identity. He had faced the mermaid, he had fought for his freedom, and he had emerged stronger for it. "I am Bobrisky," he said aloud, his voice steady. "I am more than my past, more than my desires. I am who I choose to be." The whispers faltered, the shadows around him wavering. The forest seemed to recoil slightly, as if surprised by his defiance. Taking advantage of the moment, Bobrisky continued forward, his steps firmer now. The shadows still lingered, but they no longer seemed as threatening. He had passed the first part of the trial. He had faced the darkness within himself and had not lost his way. But he knew the forest of Akoro wasn't done with him yet. There would be more tests ahead, and they would only grow more difficult. As Bobrisky pressed on, the trees began to thin, and the whispers of the shadows faded into the distance. The path ahead opened into another clearing, this one bathed in a soft golden light. In the center of the clearing stood a large ancient oak tree, its bark gnarled and twisted with age. The tree's branches stretched high into the sky, and nestled among the roots was a stone pedestal, atop which sat an intricately carved wooden box. Bobrisky approached cautiously, sensing that this was no ordinary box. As he drew closer, he saw that the carvings depicted scenes from life, some joyful, others filled with sorrow. The box seemed to pulse with a gentle energy, as if it held something precious within. Suddenly, a figure appeared beside the pedestal, a tall, imposing man with deep brown skin, dressed in traditional Yoruba robes. His eyes were kind but penetrating, as if they could see straight into Bobrisky's soul. "I am the guardian of memories," the man said, his voice deep and resonant. "This is the second trial. Within this box are the memories of your life, the choices you've made, the paths you've taken, the moments that have shaped you. To pass this trial, you must confront these memories and accept them for what they are." Bobrisky felt a chill run down his spine. Memories could be powerful, both in their ability to uplift and in their potential to haunt. He wasn't sure he was ready to face everything his past had to offer, but he knew he had no choice. If he wanted to continue his journey and earn the freedom and knowledge he sought, he had to face this trial head-on. The Guardian stepped aside, gesturing for Bobrisky to approach the pedestal. With a deep breath, Bobrisky reached out and lifted the lid of the wooden box. As the lid of the box opened, a soft light spilled out, illuminating the clearing with a warm, comforting glow. Within the box, Bobrisky saw a collection of small, delicate orbs, each one glowing with a different color. He instinctively knew that each orb represented a memory, a moment from his life that had left an indelible mark on his soul. Bobrisky hesitated, unsure of which memory to confront first. The guardian of memories watched him silently, offering no guidance. This was a trial Bobrisky had to face on his own. Finally, he reached out and picked up one of the orbs, a deep, rich blue. As his fingers closed around it, the world around him shifted, and he was suddenly no longer in the forest of Akoro. He was back in Lagos, standing in front of a mirror, the reflection showing him as he was years ago, before the fame, before the transformation. His face was tense, his eyes filled with uncertainty and longing. It was the night he had first decided to embrace his true self, to step out of the shadows and become Bobrisky. The memory was vivid, the emotions raw. He remembered the fear that gripped him, the doubts that whispered in his mind. Would people accept him? Would he find happiness in this new identity? But he also remembered the surge of determination that had followed, a fierce resolve to live his life on his own terms, no matter the cost. As the memory played out, Bobrisky felt a wave of emotions, pride, sorrow, joy, and pain, all mingling together. This was a defining moment in his life, a moment that had set him on the path he was still walking. He had taken a risk, and it had paid off, but it had also come with challenges he could never have anticipated. The scene began to fade, and Bobrisky found himself back in the clearing, the blue orb still glowing in his hand. He placed it back in the box, feeling a sense of closure. This was who he was, a person who had faced fear and uncertainty, but had chosen to move forward anyway. He accepted this part of himself, flaws and all. But there were more orbs in the box, and Bobrisky knew his trial wasn't over yet. He picked up another orb, this one a vibrant green, and once again, the world around him shifted. The vibrant green orb took Bobrisky to a different memory, one he had tried to bury deep within his mind. He was back in his early days of fame, standing on a stage in front of a crowd, basking in the applause and adoration of his fans. But behind the bright lights and cheering voices, there was something darker, a choice he had made that still haunted him. In this memory, Bobrisky recalled a moment when he had allowed fame to cloud his judgment. He had pushed away a dear friend, someone who had supported him long before the world knew his name. Blinded by the allure of fame and fortune, he had chosen to prioritize his public image over his personal relationships, leaving his friend hurt and betrayed. The memory stung, a sharp reminder of the cost of his choices. He had gained so much, but at the expense of losing someone who had truly cared for him. It was a regret that had lingered in the back of his mind, even as he continued to climb the ladder of success. As the scene played out, Bobrisky felt a deep sense of sorrow and remorse. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he also knew he couldn't ignore the lessons it had taught him. Fame had its price, and sometimes that price was paid in lost relationships and fractured trust. The memory began to fade, and Bobrisky was once again standing in the clearing, the green orb dimming in his hand. He placed it back in the box, feeling the weight of regret lift slightly from his shoulders. He couldn't undo what had been done, but he could learn from it and strive to be better moving forward. There were still more orbs in the box, and Bobrisky knew he had to confront each one to complete the trial. But he also knew that each memory, no matter how painful, was a part of who he was, a part of the journey that had brought him to this point. Bobrisky reached for the last orb in the box, a soft golden light emanating from it. As soon as he touched it, the world around him shifted once more, and he found himself in a place he had not expected, a quiet, peaceful garden filled with blooming flowers and the gentle sound of birds singing in the trees. This memory was different from the others. It was not a moment of transformation or regret, but a simple, serene day from his childhood. He was a young boy again, playing in the garden with his family. The sun was shining, and laughter filled the air as he chased after butterflies with his siblings. The warmth and joy of the moment were palpable. In this memory, Bobrisky felt a deep sense of peace and happiness. It was a time before the struggles and decisions that had shaped him. This memory reminded him of the pure, simple joys of life and the love he had received from those close to him. As he watched the scene unfold, he realized that this memory was not just a part of his past, but a reflection of what he had always wanted: happiness and connection. It was a reminder of where he came from and why he had embarked on his journey in the first place. The memory began to fade, and Bobrisky returned to the clearing, the golden orb warm in his hand. He placed it back in the box, with a renewed sense of clarity and understanding. The trials had tested him, but they had also helped him see the value of every moment in his life, both the joyful and the painful. The guardian of memories nodded in approval. "You have faced your past with courage and acceptance," he said. "You have learned from your mistakes and embraced your true self. You are ready to continue your journey." Bobrisky felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. He had confronted his past, faced his regrets, and recognized the importance of his memories. As he turned to leave the clearing, he knew that the path ahead would still be challenging, but he felt stronger and more prepared for whatever lay ahead. With the guardian's approval, Bobrisky stepped away from the clearing and continued along the path. The forest of Akoro was no longer as dark or threatening as before. The trees seemed to part slightly, guiding him forward. As he walked, the forest gradually transformed. The oppressive darkness gave way to a lighter, more welcoming environment. The air was fresher, and the scent of blooming flowers replaced the musty odor of the past trials. The journey was far from over, but the trials he had faced had given him strength and insight. Bobrisky soon reached the edge of a new clearing. In the center stood a shimmering, crystal-clear pond. The water sparkled under the sunlight that now filtered through the trees. It was a serene and tranquil place, a stark contrast to the earlier trials. As Bobrisky approached the pond, he saw a figure waiting for him, an elderly woman with a kind smile and gentle eyes. Her presence radiated warmth and wisdom. "Welcome, Bobrisky," she said softly. "I am the keeper of the heart. You have come a long way and faced many challenges. Now, you must make one final choice to complete your journey." Bobrisky looked around, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "What do I need to do?" The keeper gestured to the pond. "In this pond are reflections of your choices. Each ripple represents a decision you have made, and each reflection shows the outcome of those choices. To complete this trial, you must choose which path to follow next." Bobrisky peered into the pond. He saw multiple reflections, each showing a different future based on the choices he could make. There were paths of continued success, of redemption, and even of failure. The future seemed full of possibilities, and the weight of the decision was heavy. Taking a deep breath, Bobrisky reached out and touched the water. The ripples spread out, and the reflections began to shift and change. He saw moments of triumph, times of struggle, and glimpses of a future where he made choices that led to true happiness and fulfillment. He knew that he had learned valuable lessons from his past and faced his deepest fears. Now, it was time to choose a path that would align with the person he had become. Someone who was ready to embrace his true self and make positive choices for his future. With renewed clarity, Bobrisky chose a path that represented a future of growth, connection, and integrity. As he made his choice, the pond's waters settled, reflecting a bright and hopeful future. The keeper of the heart smiled. "You have chosen wisely," she said. "Your journey has prepared you well. Go forth with the knowledge and strength you have gained." Bobrisky thanked the keeper and stepped away from the pond. The forest path ahead was now bathed in a warm, golden light, symbolizing the new chapter of his life. With each step, he felt a sense of purpose and peace. As he walked forward, he knew that the trials had been a journey not just through the forest, but through himself. He was ready to face the future, armed with the lessons of his past and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.